People fascinate people. For artists, painters and photographers, portraiture is elemental. I titled this video Portraiture naturally because natural portraits are what I like and what I will illustrate in this video. I'm talking about classical portraiture, mainly headshots or close-ups, and designed to reveal the subject in their best light rather than showcase the photographer's skill, a professional approach in other words. The first portrait photographers had to cope with exposure times measured in minutes. So did their subjects. That's why Dorothy Catherine Draper here, photographed in 1839, looks like a poster girl for PMT. You put on a bonnet, tight corset, and sit with your neck clamped, and see if you're still smiling after 5 minutes. Times have changed though, but even though we have fast lenses and automated cameras, the basics of portraiture remain exactly the same. Now, as then, we have the photographer, a subject, and a relationship between them, and it's the relationship which really creates the portrait. It's an unforgiving discipline because once you have a sitter, the rest is up to the photographer. A landscape photographer can say the best view is inaccessible. A sports photographer that a player blocked his view at a crucial moment. Portraiture doesn't allow for excuses. It's all down to you. I'm lucky to have as my model here 15-year-old Chloe, the daughter of a neighbour and a very strikingly attractive and natural young woman, for whom modelling seems to come as second nature. That's quite rare. What I'm going to show you is the simple approach that I took for my newspaper and magazine photography. We'd arrange a daytime rendezvous at someone's home or hotel and have maybe 10 or 15 minutes with them. Having no advance idea of the background, light or even the mood of the subject, you needed to get the photography down to a basic formula within which you could always get a good picture. Given that you don't have time to set up portable studio lights, no one to hold a reflector, and that a single flash, direct or bounced, is of uncertain quality to say the least, the only option is daylight. Essentially, this is plain vanilla photography, with the simple aim of producing an attractive picture for publication and making your subject look their best. For simplicity's sake, there are two basic ways I use daylight, one the pole opposite of the other. The first is window light. Every home and hotel has windows. The other, on a sunny day, and mainly with women, is with the sun directly behind the subject. Both are simple, reliable and quick to use, while rendering a professional-looking result. Let's take a look. So let's start with the equipment. Just a camera, lens and, if you wish, a tripod. No flash, studio lights, not even a reflector. The camera equipment can be kept quite simple, a short telephoto between 40 and 75mm on my chosen Micro Four Thirds format, 80 to 150mm on full frame. A wide aperture lens is nice for getting shallow depth of field, but it isn't essential. Critical sharpness is not necessary either, and in fact many cheap or legacy lenses are ideal, often giving a more sympathetic image rendering than their modern digital counterparts. The long end of most standard kit zooms will work nicely, as will the short end of a telephoto zoom. For lighting, I love and invariably gravitate to north light. It is to portraiture what a tomato sauce is to a pizza maker. North light is simply indirect daylight, such as you get from a north-facing window. Being north-facing, it never gets the direct rays of the sun, but the term north light has widened out to mean any large and diffuse light source these days. It's the south light south of the equator, I guess. This example of north light is my son when he was a kid. The light is coming from a shaded garden. He is sitting 30 centimetres or so inside the window and looking out. I was in the garden, glimpsed him looking out of the window, grabbed my Kodachrome loaded Nikon F with 105mm f2.5 lens, and asked him to move his hand to his shoulder for a more interesting pose. Decades later, this remains one of my favourite portrait shots, and has set a pattern for my portraits ever since. You can use the window light in many different ways. From outside, looking in, as in this picture. From inside, using the window as side or directional soft lighting, depending where you face your subject and where you place yourself. My pics of Chloe were taken inside and outside of this window, in a 17th century village house in southern France. The window may not be glamorous, but the light is, and is an example of how you don't need fancy setups to get great lighting. There's no rule against using sunlight or directional light in general, but it can be difficult to handle and will not suit most sitters. though it can be useful for setting a mood for character portraits. Against the light portraits, like this one, in film days used to require a reflector or fill in flash, but such is the dynamic range of digital sensors, such encumbrances are no longer necessary. The fringes of the hair are burned out, but with these pictures that is an enhancement, the halo of light adding dynamism and life. So let's get on with making a portrait. As I said, I'll be using Chloe here, but family and friends are great for portraits too because they will be relaxed around you, which is half the battle. While I didn't usually have time to prepare for a newspaper portrait session, you probably would and should. Advanced planning makes the task much easier and more enjoyable for all concerned. You don't need a rigid shooting schedule. In fact, serendipity can give you better shots than you dreamed of. But you do need a plan. An indecisive photographer, fiddling with the gear, dragging the subject around, and looking for a location, not knowing what he wants, will make the subject nervous or irritable, neither of which contributes to the final product. The only time I can think of when it paid dividends was Karsh of Ottawa's famous portrait of Winston Churchill. He snatched Churchill's signature fat cigar from his lips, thus obtaining the famous British bulldog expression. I haven't tried this myself since few people I photograph smoke cigars, or want to look like a bulldog, especially the women. Okay, once you've made arrangements with your sitter for the session, preparation can be split up into sections. First, decide how you want to portray your sitter. Are they light-hearted, full of fun, sporty, a lovely smile, beautiful eyes or hair, muscular, stylish dresser, casual, formal? There will have been some attribute that made you want to photograph them, so try to identify it. In the case of Chloe, she's at that magical age when the young woman and the young girl are coexistent, and that's what I wanted to capture. In the end, it's just something to go on to get you started, in the same way that some writers start a new sentence before stopping work for the day. If you're unsure about posing your sitter, go through newspapers and magazines and see how other photographers do it. Cut them out and take them on your shoot for reference, for both you and your sitter to refer to. Don't copy slavishly though. The idea is to develop your own style, so amend those professional shots as you see fit. Having settled that, second, think on where to take the pictures. I just wanted soft window light, so any window that didn't have direct sunlight would do the trick, plus a location where I could position Chloe with the sun behind her. If you have a sporty subject, maybe shoot at a football ground for example. Make sure you know the location and when the sun will be in a suitable position for your pictures. Remember that viewers of your picture will subconsciously connect the background or props to the subject. If your subject is holding a glass of beer, the viewer will assume they like a drink or are sociable. With boats in the background, that they are sailors or something to do with boats. In Chloe's case, since the emphasis would be on her youth and femininity, I just wanted a plain or out-of-focus background, so that full attention is on her. Now you know roughly how you want to portray the person and where you will take the pictures. Thirdly, decide on the gear. On my chosen Micro Four Thirds system, any lens from 42.5 to 75mm will work, depending on the space available. If full frame is your bag, 85 to 150mm. For this kind of portraiture, wide angles are unsuitable, exaggerating facial features, and giving a caricature effect at worst. Longer lenses can be used, but at the risk of flattening facial features somewhat. That's less of a problem though, and for big close-ups, a 150mm on Micro Four Thirds, 300mm on a full frame can work well. This shot is at 150mm on my Olympus Pro Zoom. Reasonably shallow depth of field can tame a busy background, and is much easier to get on a full frame setup, or medium format as I used to use. But in practice, Micro Four Thirds and a 45mm lens at f2 or 2.8 will do the trick, because you will be quite close to your subject. That gives you the depth of field of an 85mm at f4 or 5.6 on full frame, and it's about right to get enough of the face in focus while still subduing the background. Getting as much distance as possible between the sitter and the background will help tame a busy background too. Don't obsess over shallow depth of field though. A careful choice of background is much more important, and if you're shooting a close-in headshot, you'll possibly need to stop down a bit anyway to keep the tip of the nose in focus. On the other hand, with this street portrait shot off the cuff, the Panasonic Nocticron at f1.2 enables me to use the background as an atmospheric part of the picture. There aren't any rules after all. You can easily have too shallow depth of field. Remember, it's a pictorial tool, not a party piece, and shallower does not of itself equal better. For focusing, I find face-eye focus is so accurate and fast now that there is little point in using anything else. It's purpose-designed and it shows. Practice so that you know how it will behave and you can develop confidence in it. Shutter speeds don't really matter so long as you can hold the camera still, though over 250th may be better for young children who may move unexpectedly. I prefer single shot for portraits. Firing off machine gun bursts can be a little off-putting for the sitter, while single shots sound more relaxed and measured, more confident. Not to mention making picture editing much easier after the shoot. Focusing, as I said, can be left to face-eye recognition. That and aperture priority exposure relieves the photographer of all technical worries and free to concentrate solely on the sitter. I sometimes like to use a tripod for photographing adults. Line up the shot and then chat and direct the subject with your face directly above the camera. That way they can respond to you but still maintain eye contact with the lens. Ideally, your camera would be invisible, but the next best thing is to handle it so fluently that it becomes unnoticeable. Unless you have a good reason otherwise, the subject should look straight into the lens. Looking out can look stylish, but loses the immediacy and soulfulness of eye contact. Everyone has a good side of their face and a less good one, so take a few pictures and decide between you which you think is best. Is a smile best or a straighter face? In Chloe's case, for example, she smiles with her eyes, so a happy face smile isn't necessary. Which brings me to the fourth matter, and the reason you did all the preparation. You need to be in charge. It's your shoot, but unless your subject is a professional model who will understand and act out what you're aiming to capture, you will need to direct your sitter. That doesn't mean barking orders. It means chatting and suggesting, being direct and authoritative. Don't just stand there and click away in silence. It becomes embarrassing for everyone and quickly stalls the session. Your pictures need reactions, interplay and expressions to be portraits. You must direct. When a pose looks good, say so. Say, "That looks great, just hold it there." Flattery can get you everywhere. You pose so naturally I hardly need to tell you what to do. Encourage rather than order. "That's nice. Now, if you just look to the left a little," rather than, "Okay, look left now." It will smooth the way and if done with confidence will give a good account of your professionalism. Ultimately, it's the same personality that makes a good hairdresser that makes a good portrait photographer. It can be helpful to take a few pics from various angles, left profile, right, full-on, three-quarter full-on, smiling, looking into the camera and away, and show them to your subject. Everyone has a good side and a less good one, so on the camera monitor you can agree what is best. That will show that you're on their side and that they can trust your judgment. If the sitter has ideas and suggestions, listen to them and use them if they are helpful. The best pictures will come from a cooperative session that you both enjoy. If you run out of ideas, take a break and review the pics on a tablet with your sitter. The final shots will be the result of the sitter's looks and both your personalities. Many of the show business people I photographed got pretty tired of photo sessions since they do so many. The best ever feeling is when you wrap a session and the person says, "Oh, you finished already, I was enjoying that." That's the ultimate accolade. Unless, of course, the pictures are garbage. In all portraits, the eye's at the thing. That eye nearest the camera must be sharp. So much expression is in the eyes, and that's why you must have a rapport with your model. You can fake a smile, but as the Eagles wrote, you can't hide those lion eyes. And if the windows to the soul is saying, "Is this going to take much longer?" and the mouth is saying, "Cheese," you have a snapshot of the person, not a portrait. To recap, portraiture is meant to bring out the subject's looks and personality. But in order to do so, you need not only to have a sense of who they are, but know how to bring it out. Get the technical stuff down pat so that the session is between you and your subject, with the camera relegated to nothing more than a necessary encumbrance. I settle on a micro four thirds camera with 45mm Olympus f1.8 set to f2, aperture priority exposure, face-eye focus mode, shooting single shots, and a diffuse light source. Now, forget the camera, concentrate on your sitter. Be relaxed and be friendly. But if a male with a female sitter, not overly friendly, and keep a professional distance between you. I reiterate, no faffing about with the camera, no outward show of unsureness. If you enjoy yourself, they will. And when you show them the final results on a tablet or as prints and they love them, well, you're on top of the world. As I said at the beginning of this, people fascinate people. That's why I love making portraits of them, naturally. Thanks for watching.